My wife said, "The baby's yours. Stop asking questions." I answered, "I believe you completely," then quietly got a DNA test and mailed copies to her entire family. Now they're blowing up my phone, begging to talk it out. I'm 35 and sitting here wondering how I missed all the signs. My wife Rachel is 31 and we've been married for 4 years. She gave birth to our daughter Emma 5 months ago, except Emma might not be ours after all. Let me back up. Rachel and I had been trying to get pregnant for about a year when she finally conceived. I was over the moon. We both were, or so I thought. Everything seemed normal during the pregnancy. Regular doctor visits, baby shopping, setting up the nursery. But looking back now, there were things that didn't add up. Rachel had always been social, but during her pregnancy she became secretive about her phone, started taking calls in other rooms, would quickly close apps when I walked by. Said it was just pregnancy forums and baby planning stuff. She also started working late more often. Her job in HR doesn't usually require overtime, but suddenly she had evening meetings and weekend training sessions. Always had reasonable explanations when I asked. The biggest red flag should have been her reaction when Emma was born. I expected tears of joy, that emotional moment you see in movies. Instead, Rachel seemed almost nervous, kept glancing at me like she was waiting for something. Emma came out with features that seemed unusual. Not dramatically different, but both Rachel and I have lighter complexions and Emma's skin tone was noticeably darker. When I mentioned it to Rachel, she got defensive, told me babies often change a lot in their first year, which is true, but there was also the timing issue. Rachel claimed her last period was in early March, which would put conception around mid-March. But Emma was born in early November at supposedly 36 weeks. The math didn't quite work unless conception happened earlier than Rachel claimed. When I brought this up to Rachel, she snapped at me. "The baby's yours. Stop asking questions." That phrase stuck with me. Who says that to their husband about their own child? I told her I believed her completely and dropped the subject. But privately, I started paying closer attention. Over the next few months, Emma's features became more defined. Her skin tone stayed darker than either of ours. She started developing facial characteristics that didn't really remind me of either Rachel or myself. More concerning were Rachel's continued phone habits. Still secretive, still taking calls privately. One evening I heard her talking quietly in the kitchen, caught fragments like, "He doesn't suspect anything," and "We have to be more careful." When she came back to the living room, I asked who she was talking to. She said it was her sister discussing baby stuff. But her sister lives in Arizona, and it was past midnight there. 2 weeks ago, something happened that made everything click. Rachel left her phone on the coffee table when she went to shower. It buzzed with a text message, and the preview showed on the lock screen. The message was from someone named Marcus. "Miss you and our little girl. Can't wait to see you both again." Our little girl. I didn't touch her phone, but that message burned into my brain. Rachel had mentioned planning to visit her mom this weekend with Emma. Said I should stay home and catch up on work since I'd been putting in extra hours. That night, I made a decision. I needed to know the truth. Since I'm legally Emma's father as her mother's husband, I could authorize medical testing. I scheduled a routine pediatric appointment for Emma and requested paternity testing as part of standard blood work. Told the pediatrician I had concerns about genetic health issues and wanted to verify biological relationship for medical records. The doctor was understanding. These requests aren't uncommon, apparently. Results would take 3 to 4 weeks. Meanwhile, I started paying closer attention to Rachel's schedule. The weekend visit to her mom turned into visits every couple weeks. Always just her and Emma. Always when I was supposedly too busy to come along. I started noticing patterns. Rachel would get texts that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in months. She'd disappear for hours on Saturday afternoons claiming she was running errands, would come back in a good mood with very few actual purchases. 4 weeks later, the DNA results came back. 0% probability of paternity. I stared at that paper for probably an hour. Everything made sense now. The secretive behavior, the defensive reactions, the timing issues, the weekend visits. Emma wasn't my daughter. Rachel had been cheating and gotten pregnant by someone else. But instead of confronting Rachel immediately, I did something else first. I got Rachel's address book from her desk drawer and made copies of the DNA test results. Lots of copies. Then I prepared a mailing to her immediate family, her parents, her 2 sisters, her brother. I'd met them all multiple times and had their addresses from Christmas cards and wedding invitations over the years. I wrote a simple cover letter. I thought you should know the truth about Emma's paternity. The DNA test results are attached. Rachel has been lying to everyone, including me. I'm filing for divorce and will not be taking financial responsibility for another man's child. Mailed everything out on a Thursday using regular mail. Most people would get it Saturday. Then I waited. Saturday afternoon, my phone started ringing. First Rachel's mom, then her sister, then her dad. I didn't answer any of them. Rachel was at her mom's house for another weekend visit. Around 6 p.m. she called me frantically. "What did you do? My family is calling me asking about DNA tests. What is going on?" I told her calmly that I'd simply shared some important medical information with people who deserved to know the truth. "You had no right to involve my family in our private business." "Our private business? Rachel, you've been lying to me and everyone else for months. Emma isn't my daughter. Your family has been celebrating a grandchild that isn't related to me. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. You don't need to destroy everything over this." "I'm not destroying anything, Rachel. I'm just not living a lie anymore." She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, her mom called. I answered this time. Rachel's mom was upset, asking me to not do anything hasty. Said families go through rough patches and this could be worked out. Asked me to think about Emma, who was innocent in all this. I told her she was right that Emma was innocent. That's exactly why I wasn't going to pretend to be her father and then leave later when the truth eventually came out anyway. But what about Rachel? She made a mistake, but she loves you. She loves the security I provide. There's a difference. Sunday, the calls continued from other family members. Rachel's dad demanding explanations, her sister trying to mediate, her brother actually supporting my decision, saying he'd suspected something was off about the timing. Rachel came home Sunday night. Emma wasn't with her. She'd left her at her mother's house. We talked for hours. Rachel finally admitted to the affair with Marcus, a guy she'd met at a work conference about 18 months ago. She claimed she'd tried to end it multiple times, but he kept pursuing her. She insisted she'd planned to break things off permanently after Emma was born and focus on our marriage. Said she was going to tell Marcus that Emma was mine and cut all contact. "How long were you planning to lie to me about this?" "I hoped maybe you'd never need to know. Emma could have looked like either of us as she got older." "You were going to let me raise another man's child for 18 years? I thought it would be better for everyone. You wanted a baby. Emma needed a stable father figure. Marcus isn't ready for that kind of responsibility. So you decided to trick me into providing what Marcus couldn't?" She didn't have a good answer for that. Monday morning, I consulted with a divorce attorney. Tuesday, I filed papers. Since Emma wasn't biologically mine and I had DNA proof, I wouldn't be responsible for child support. Rachel would need to establish paternity with Marcus for financial support. Wednesday, Rachel's workplace situation got complicated. A colleague had heard about our separation and asked if it was related to the rumored paternity issues. Rachel had to meet with her supervisor to address the gossip affecting her work environment. By Thursday, word was spreading in our social circle. Rachel's family members had shared details with their close friends. In a community where many people know each other, news travels fast. Friday, Marcus contacted me through Facebook Messenger, said Rachel had told him about the DNA test, and he wanted to discuss Emma's future. Asked if we could meet to work out some kind of arrangement. I replied that I had no relationship with Emma and wouldn't be involved in any arrangements. He was Emma's father, and Rachel was Emma's mother. They could figure out their own situation. Marcus argued that Emma had been living with me for 5 months and sudden changes would be traumatic for her. I pointed out that Emma was 5 months old and wouldn't remember any of this. The longer the deception continued, the more traumatic it would become. Rachel spent the weekend trying to manage the fallout with her family and figure out next steps with Marcus. Update 1. 6 weeks later. 6 weeks since I mailed those DNA results, and the consequences continue expanding. Rachel's affair has created complications she clearly hadn't anticipated. The family situation remained tense. Rachel's parents were split on how to handle things. Her mother wanted to support Rachel through the crisis. Her father was angry about being deceived and embarrassed that he'd been bragging about his granddaughter to friends and coworkers. Rachel's sisters took different approaches. One blamed me for being unforgiving and not working harder to save the marriage. The other thought Rachel had brought everything on herself and needed to face reality. The social consequences affected Rachel more than expected. Several mutual friends felt deceived and angry. They'd given baby gifts, attended the baby shower, celebrated Emma's birth, all while Rachel was actively lying about Emma's paternity. Some of our couple friends felt uncomfortable maintaining relationships with both of us separately. They had to choose sides for social gatherings, which created awkward dynamics. Rachel's work environment became strained. While her personal life didn't directly affect her job performance, the ongoing drama and family phone calls during work hours were disruptive. Her supervisor suggested she take some personal time to resolve her situation. Marcus's involvement proved complicated. When the affair was secret, he was excited about having a relationship with Rachel and seeing Emma occasionally. But when he became legally responsible as Emma's biological father, his enthusiasm dimmed. Marcus lived in an apartment with a roommate and had limited experience with babies. His lifestyle wasn't set up for regular childcare responsibilities. He'd agreed to informal financial support but balked when Rachel mentioned formal child support arrangements. Rachel discovered that Marcus as a secret boyfriend was very different from Marcus as a co-parent and financial provider. He'd been charming and attentive when their relationship was an escape from reality. But real parental responsibilities weren't nearly as exciting. 3 weeks ago, Rachel tried to negotiate a reconciliation. She suggested we could work through the trust issues and I could still be involved in Emma's life as a stepfather figure. I explained that wasn't interested in raising another man's child, especially when the mother had lied about paternity from conception through birth and beyond. But you cared about Emma before you knew the truth. Those feelings don't just disappear. Those feelings were based on lies, Rachel. Every moment of attachment I felt was built on deception you created deliberately. What about Emma's well-being? She needs stability. Emma's well-being is Marcus's responsibility now. He's her father. Rachel argued that Marcus wasn't reliable enough to provide the stability Emma needed. I pointed out that was Rachel's problem to solve. She'd chosen Marcus as Emma's father when she chose to have an affair with him. 2 weeks ago, the divorce proceedings progressed. My attorney filed for legal disestablishment of paternity along with the divorce papers. The DNA test results supported removing my name from Emma's birth certificate and eliminating any ongoing parental obligations. Rachel's attorney tried to argue for spousal support based on the length of our marriage. My attorney countered that the marriage had been based on fraud and deception, particularly regarding the pregnancy that prompted many of our joint financial decisions. The court scheduled hearings for next month. Rachel would need to establish formal paternity with Marcus and arrange child support through the state system. Rachel's financial situation became precarious. She'd planned to take extended maternity leave, relying on my income. Now she was facing single motherhood on her HR salary, with uncertain support from Marcus. She had to find childcare for Emma and return to work full-time earlier than planned. Her mother helped temporarily but made it clear this wasn't a permanent arrangement. Last week, Rachel sent me a long email apologizing for everything and asking if there was any way to salvage our relationship. She claimed the affair was the biggest mistake of her life and she'd do anything to make things right. My response was brief. The mistake wasn't the affair, Rachel. The mistake was lying about Emma's paternity and trying to trick me into raising another man's child. That's not something you can apologize away. She replied asking what happened to forgiveness and second chances. I explained that some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive. Lying about a child's paternity falls into that category. By Friday, Marcus had to acknowledge paternity officially and establish a support arrangement. The amount was based on his income and existing obligations, which left Rachel with less financial help than she'd hoped for. Rachel's new reality was setting in: single motherhood, reduced income, an unreliable co-parent, and social isolation from the deception she'd maintained for months. Meanwhile, my life was becoming simpler and more peaceful. No more wondering about mysterious phone calls or unexplained schedule changes. No more analyzing whether I was being told the truth about basic facts. The divorce would be final in a few more weeks. Then I could move forward completely without any connection to Rachel's choices or their consequences. Update 2. 4 months later. 4 months since those DNA results went out, and the full scope of consequences has become clear. Rachel's situation continues deteriorating, while Marcus proves to be exactly as unreliable as expected. The Marcus co-parenting arrangement became a disaster. His initial enthusiasm about being involved in Emma's life faded quickly when faced with actual parental responsibilities. His visits became irregular, and his financial contributions were often late. Rachel tried to enforce the formal support agreement, but Marcus argued that his income was inconsistent and he couldn't guarantee regular payments. The state child support system proved slow and bureaucratic when dealing with non-compliant fathers. Marcus also started bringing complications from his own life into the situation. He had a complicated relationship history, and his ex-girlfriend wasn't happy about his new baby with a married woman. This created drama that affected his availability and willingness to be involved with Emma. Rachel discovered that dating as a single mother with an affair baby was significantly more challenging than she'd anticipated. Most potential partners weren't interested in immediately taking on a complicated situation involving deception and an unreliable biological father. Her social circle remained limited. The initial scandal had created permanent divisions among mutual friends. Some people forgave her, others didn't, but everyone remembered the deception. Rachel's family relationships stabilized somewhat, but remained strained. Her parents provided minimal support, but made it clear they disapproved of the choices that created the situation. Holiday gatherings were awkward, and conversations avoided topics related to Emma's paternity. The financial pressures intensified over time. Emma's expenses increased, while Marcus's support remained unreliable. Rachel had to move to a smaller apartment and take on additional freelance work to make ends meet. Her career advancement stalled. The personal drama and time conflicts from single parenting affected her work performance. She remained employed but was passed over for promotions and excluded from high-profile projects. 2 months ago, Rachel made one final attempt to contact me. She sent a message through a mutual friend asking if I'd consider meeting to discuss Emma's future. The mutual friend reported that Rachel was struggling with depression and isolation. Single motherhood was much harder than she'd expected, and Marcus's involvement continued declining. I declined the meeting request, explained that Emma's future was Rachel and Marcus's responsibility to determine. I had no role in their situation and no interest in being drawn back into their problems. The friend suggested that Emma was innocent and deserved consideration, regardless of how she was conceived. I agreed Emma was innocent, which was exactly why she deserved to have her real father take responsibility instead of being raised by someone who'd been deceived about her parentage. Last month, the divorce was finalized. All legal connections between Rachel and me were severed. The paternity disestablishment was approved, and my name was removed from Emma's birth certificate. Marcus was officially established as Emma's legal father with formal support obligations. However, his actual compliance with those obligations remained inconsistent. 3 weeks ago, I ran into Rachel at a local store. She was struggling with Emma, who was crying while Rachel tried to manage groceries and baby supplies. She looked exhausted and overwhelmed. She saw me and quickly looked away. No attempt at conversation or acknowledgement. Probably didn't want to face another reminder of what her choices had cost her. I felt no sympathy watching her struggle. Rachel had created this situation through deliberate deception and manipulation. The difficulties she was experiencing were natural consequences of her own decisions. My life had moved forward positively. The house was peaceful, my finances were stable, and I was exploring new relationships without the baggage of wondering whether I was being lied to about fundamental aspects of my partner's life. I started dating someone recently who appreciates honesty and has no complicated history involving deception or affairs. The contrast with Rachel's secretive behavior was refreshing. Final update, 8 months later. 8 months since I sent those DNA results, and this story has reached its natural conclusion. Everyone has settled into the reality their choices created. Rachel's situation never improved significantly. Marcus's involvement with Emma remained minimal, and his support contributions stayed unreliable. She adapted to single motherhood, but the isolation and financial strain were permanent features of her new life. Her attempts to rebuild her social circle were only partially successful. The deception had created a reputation that followed her in community settings. People remembered the paternity fraud even if they didn't actively shun her. Rachel's family provided basic support, but relationships remained distant. The embarrassment and anger from being deceived never fully disappeared. Family gatherings were cordial but not warm. Her career stabilized at a lower level than before. She remained employed, but advancement opportunities were limited. The time demands of single parenting and the previous workplace disruptions had lasting effects. 6 months ago, Rachel's friend reached out one final time asking if I'd contribute to Emma's future expenses like education or medical needs. The friend emphasized that Emma was innocent and deserved support regardless of paternity issues. My response was clear. Emma's needs were her biological father's responsibility. Marcus had created financial obligations when he chose to have an affair with a married woman. Those obligations belonged to him, not to the man he'd helped deceive. Rachel apparently accepted that I wouldn't be involved in Emma's life in any capacity. The friend reported that Rachel was focusing on building stability with the resources available to her and Marcus. Marcus's pattern of unreliability continued, but Rachel adapted her expectations accordingly. She stopped depending on his consistency and built her life around what she could control. Last month, I heard through social media that Rachel had started dating someone new, a single father who understood the challenges of blended families. Whether that relationship would develop into something stable remained to be seen. Emma was now over a year old and developing normally, despite the complicated circumstances of her parentage. She would grow up knowing her biological father was inconsistent but present occasionally. My life had completely moved forward. I was in a serious relationship with someone who valued honesty and had no history of deception. We were discussing marriage and potentially starting a family based on truth rather than lies. The contrast between my current relationship and my marriage to Rachel was striking. No secret phone calls, no mysterious schedule changes, no wondering whether I was being told the truth about basic facts. I learned to trust my instincts when something seemed off, rather than accepting convenient explanations. I also learned that some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive or overlook. The DNA test results didn't destroy Rachel's life. Her choices destroyed her stable situation. The test results just prevented me from being manipulated into supporting those choices indefinitely. Rachel wanted to maintain her marriage's security while pursuing her affair's excitement. She wanted to raise her affair baby with my financial support while keeping Marcus available for emotional fulfillment. Reality doesn't work that way. Choices have consequences, and deception eventually surfaces. Marcus wanted the excitement of an affair without the responsibility of being a committed father. He got exactly what he chose, a baby he sees sporadically, and financial obligations that strain his lifestyle. I wanted honesty and commitment from my marriage. When I discovered those were missing, I chose truth over comfortable lies. The mailed DNA results weren't revenge. They were information sharing. Rachel's family deserved to know they'd been celebrating and supporting a child based on lies about her parentage. Everyone deserved to know the truth about what Rachel was capable of and what she'd actually done. That's not vindictive, that's just honest. Rachel and Marcus thought they could maintain their deception indefinitely. They thought I would never question Emma's paternity or investigate suspicious circumstances. They were wrong. The truth came out and everyone had to face reality. Rachel learned that affair partners don't automatically become reliable life partners. That pregnancy doesn't guarantee commitment from men who are already proven to be unfaithful. Marcus learned that creating babies is easier than raising them consistently. That exciting affairs become boring obligations when faced with actual parental responsibilities. Emma will grow up understanding that choices have consequences and that honesty matters in relationships. I learned that protecting yourself from deception isn't cruel or vindictive. It's necessary and appropriate. Sometimes the truth is the most powerful response available. Rachel and Marcus bet on my ignorance and acceptance of lies. They lost that bet completely. Everyone got exactly what their actions earned them.